Okay, welcome. Sorry for that exciting experience. Welcome to the parents of teenagers. Well done, everybody. You're a parent of a teenager, and I just feel like I just need to applaud you and say, well done. You're doing great. Because if you're watching this Facebook Live, then that means you're alive, and your teenagers somewhere exist. Well done. You are there. I sometimes I just feel like there's nothing more to say besides just a high five of teenage parenting. Today we are talking about, hi Sarah. Today we are talking about, you don't have any teenagers. Oh, look at you, wise people looking ahead. We are talking about failure. And before I talk about failure, I just wanted to tell you a couple of things. One, we have revamped. That's the word I've been looking for. I couldn't figure it out. We've revamped the parentingforfaith.org website and made it more navigable and added a bunch of stuff. So there's over 250 articles and videos on the parentingforfaith.org website. And if you click on the little magnifying glass, then you can type in any topic you want, and hopefully something will come up from that. And there's also different ways of navigating, drop-down menus and everything. So check it out there. The second thing is that the Parenting Children for Life of Faith omnibus version, the blue book, the one that talks about how to help your kid connect with God, and the whole second book on purpose and helping your kid find a purpose and know their calling in life, and the third book about confidence and how to help them have a God-centered confidence and handle comparison and media and all sorts of stuff, including failure. There's a whole chapter on failure and 2 chapters on comparison. All of that is in the book, but it is now available on audiobook, because why not? So if you prefer to have me talk to you for 10 hours and 45 minutes, yes, I read the whole thing, then you can get the audiobook on Audible. It is me, all of it, but at least you can have access to it if you want. But you will have to pay for that. That is like an actual pay thing. But if you want something free, then if you've wanted to run a Parenting for Faith course or be part of a Parenting for Faith course, and your church doesn't run it, and you're too busy to want to run it yourself, although you can, it's free, then we are doing a watch party, which is basically joining a Facebook page, and we're going to play the course videos, and people from all over the country and internationally are all going to watch it together, and you can type and answer questions and have an online discussion about it. So if you want to join in, it's on Thursdays at 8 o'clock starting on January 30th. You can watch it yourself, you can gather people over, but it's free and it's there. Right, there. That's what I wanted to say. Now, actual failure. The reason why I wanted to talk about this, I think particularly as a youth pastor, I spent so much time with teenagers about this topic. It's one of the reasons why I wrote the whole confidence book, was this sort of sense, because confidence and failure are sort of linked, and we feel like failure is the ultimate test of confidence. And I think that simplifies failure and doesn't really help our kids, because when failure is about confidence, then we're not noticing how often we fail in everyday life. Because sometimes it's like, the big thing, do I succeed or fail at the big thing? And then how do I cope with that big thing? And it's hard to play catch up with those huge fails. And actually, particularly with teenagers, if we can teach them how to handle the little failures, then handling the big failure is just a next step up to what they already know. And so actually teaching our kids how to fail and what to do in that is one of the biggest and greatest gifts we can give our kids, because often it's not actually about confidence, it's about life skills, and it's about who God is in the normality of life, and it's just being a person. So, pardon me, I wanted to sort of take a step back to just talk a little bit about failure in general, and then give us some really specific, teenage specific tools on how to go forward, because if we talked in the I've just finished one on under 5s and one on 5 to 11s, and those I think have some different tools in there. And so if you feel like you want to go back and listen to those, feel free. But I just wanted to talk about failure in general, because this is a way that we can talk about failure with teenagers that becomes really helpful. Because failure is natural and necessary. And I say that over and over and over again to every teenager that I've ever ministered to. Failure is natural, and it's not national. It's natural and necessary, because that's how everybody learns. You cannot really learn without failure. Picture any instrument you've ever learned, any sport you've ever played, learning how to, walk and talk and stuff. Get yourself around under fives, and their whole lives are just making mistakes and learning from them. That's it. That's how you learn. And none of us are done learning. And so I, as an adult, am still learning. My grandparents are still learning. We are all on a journey, and we're not finished yet. God promises that He will spend our whole lives teaching us and shaping us and growing us to be more like Him, and none of us are finished yet. We are all still learning, and failure is a natural and necessary part of that. So we've got to expect that we are going to fail on a daily basis. And that's okay. But our job is to figure out how to cope with that so that it becomes this joyful, wonderful learning process and not something that crushes us. And that's something that, as a parent, I want to make sure you have, because that's like essential to you. And that's really, really important. If we own that value, then some of it has to do with us going on the journey of communicating to our kids that we don't expect them to be perfect. Because we're not perfect, and we're here to walk them on the journey of their growth, not their journey of always being perfect. And that can be one of the biggest tools we have. The first tool I would suggest then for helping our kids cope with failure, think about failure, do failure, particularly teenagers, is be the outside eye of admiration for your children. So many teenagers talk about how their parents only see the bad in them, which I know is not true, but it's how it feels for a teenager. Partially because we see all of the stuff they're not good at yet, or the stuff we expect them to be able to do, like how to pick up all of your clothing, how to put your clothes on correctly, how to do the stuff that I've just spent time asking you to do, and it can be incredibly frustrating. And so our kids can feel that we see all of the ways that they make mistakes and all of the places they fail. And you will end up at some point getting the, I just feel like you don't see me anymore conversation. And one of the things that we can offer our kids is the fact that we do see them, and we see so much of the good. What's great to them praise is not perfection, but praise learning, progress, and effort. I'm going to say it again. Learning, progress, and effort, because that's what kids need to be seen. That's what our teenagers need to feel seen in, because we'll always celebrate their successes. That's great. But there's so many opportunities to praise them for their learning, for their progress and their effort, because that's where failure sits, in that learning, progress, and effort. And so as your kids get better at something, or they remember to do something, thank you for cleaning the table. Thank you for tidying that away. I appreciate it. I haven't noticed your underwear on the banister for like a whole week, and I really appreciate that. Thank you. That progress or the effort, you see them revising. You see them making a brave choice to stay home from a party to study. And you're like, I see that, and I admire that. And I just think, I wish I was as wise as you when I was your age. And all of those things that you can do, so that no matter what happens, whether they succeed or fail at the big thing, GCSEs are coming up, they are obsessed about that. If they've had 2 years of you pointing out how you love their learning, and they're demonstrating their learning, and their effort is noted and seen, and that you are just, as they talk, you're like, wow, that revision must be going in, because you are like, I've never learned that before. And noting their progress and seeing the effort that they turn in and seeing how it turns out. By the time you get to the GCSE, they'll be big. That'll be big, but they will have all this confidence of knowing that you've seen every journey on the way, and every time that they thought they would study and they didn't, and that didn't work out well on the mocks, and then them learning from that, and you're like, wow, you really have changed in response to your mocks. That's fantastic. And just being that outside eye of admiration is essential for our kids in dealing with failure. Because if we just go, you're doing great, you're doing perfect, you're doing wonderful, then we're not seeing the stuff, the standing up and the persevering and the being tired and all of that stuff. And praising them in the journey is really, really useful for them. The second thing that is particularly useful for teenagers when it comes to failure is creating windows into your now and into your past, because we are all mistake people and we all make bad choices and we all make mistakes and we all are dealing with failures. And our kids need to see how to cope with that. And particularly as adults with teenage children, we can give them insight into some of our bigger failures. Currently in our jobs, moments where we had a bad meeting and we did not watch our mouths and we said stuff we shouldn't have, and we got into a conflict unwisely and we didn't badly. And to be able to come home and tell that story and say, I had a tough day today and I'm kind of embarrassed and feel a bit ashamed of myself because I just didn't come in prepared, and I knew I should stop and I didn't, and I'm like kicking myself for it, and I don't know, this is how I'm dealing with it. I went and I spent some time with God and I told him how it was, and he showed me a bit of what was going on in my heart, and I said, I'm sorry, and I've a mess to clean up tomorrow. I don't know, but I'm learning. I will not do it the same way. Next time I have a meeting, I've decided if I'm meeting with that person, I'm going to spend a half hour in the bathroom beforehand, because I'm never going to let myself do that again. And to tell that story of your failure and how you're walking it out, because other than saying, I made that mistake once and this is how I did it perfectly next time, that's not what they want to hear. They want to hear the real life, creating windows into the real life of how you dealt with it with God, how you're dealing with the shame, how you're dealing with being open about it and talking about it, and it's okay, nobody's laughing at you or judging you, and how you're learning from it. And all of that is a gift, an absolute gift to a teenager. So tell your stories of stuff that happens now. Tell your stories of unresolved past, when you made a mistake and you didn't deal with it well and you didn't learn from that, and you still aren't sure what you should have done, and ask your advice and whatever. Create windows, because teenagers don't respond well, as you know, to advice giving. And so coming on in and being like, I know what you should do, I'll give you some advice, isn't helpful. Creating windows into how you're coping with your life is really helpful, because it gives them a framework which to lay on to themselves. The third thing, I have 4 things. The third thing, feel free also to type in your wisdom and your advice and things that were really helpful to you underneath. Also, feel free to ask questions. I'll leave some time to ask questions, to answer questions as well. Another thing that might be useful here in this creating windows is creating windows into other people's lives. Invite people over to your house, but if you want to harness the power of YouTube, I need to find it for you and I'll put it on the link. But I think it's called 100 Days of Rejection. And this guy, I think multiple people have tried to do it, where they basically said, I'm afraid of rejection. I'm afraid of failure, essentially. And so I'm going to do a different task that I'm guaranteed to fail at every day for 100 days. And I'm going to video it. It's hilarious and funny and awe-inspiring. And so if your kid's particularly struggling with that, watch that with them, or suggest it, or say, I'm really into this, and get into it, because it's funny. They walks up and asks people for 100 pounds and they say no. Or he went and asked Krispy Kreme to make Olympic rings out of donuts, and the person was like, sure, and stayed like hours after and did it. And he was like, well, I expected to fail at that, but I didn't, and what don't I ask? And it's great reflection by people in their 20s. And so 100 Days of Rejection is a really useful YouTube thing to look at, to just create windows into other people's journeys of this is really great, rather than you shouldn't feel sad. The third thing is self-talk. You will notice sometimes that your kids get into self-talk. They call themselves stupid. They get frustrated with themselves. They judge themselves. And those can be 2 different things, and it's helpful to know. One can be shame, that they are ashamed, sometimes rightly, in terms of, I made bad sin choices and I have shame on me and I need to go to God and repent and get clean. And there's that. But there's also being embarrassed that they aren't perfect yet, and that they're ashamed of not being the perfect body shape or something. And there's this weird shame that sits on them. And it's really useful to notice that and to name it, and to help them figure out how to get out of that, where wrong thinking is, and where those judgment and self-labels are. I know one parent, and you know your kids better than anybody, so I can only give you suggestions, but one parent noticed that her daughter was doing a lot of self-talk, and she just said, I would never let somebody else talk to you the way you talk to you, and so I don't want you to talk to you like that. So I'm going to start calling out the lie whenever you say a lie about yourself, because it's a lie, and I don't let other people lie about you, and I don't want you to lie about you. So I'm going to tell you, so when the kid would be like, nobody likes me, she's like, well, I love you. There's 13 people who love you. These people think you're amazing, and I've looked at this, and there's that. So I think actually you are funny, compassionate, wonderful. You have friends who would cross the aisle for you, who would show up at your party in the middle of the night. You have an uncle who would drive across the thing. You are loved, and I know it feels like that right now. But I just wanted to whisper the truth in your ear. So you're not saying you can't think that. You're saying, I just want to remind you of the truth that also goes alongside of that. And for some kids, that works great. I know another family who made it into a game because they had like 5 kids. And so if you caught anybody lying about themselves, you had to call it out, to say the truth. And then you got like a little thing in the jar. And whoever, like, when you reached a level, then you got some ice cream. And so you had these kids being like, I'm rubbish at this. And then like 3 siblings being like, no, you're not. You're really good. And I've seen you persevere. And lots of times that I saw you in your room and you tried it really well. And I was so proud of you for persevering. Yes. And then like going off. And that worked for their family. Other families, you're like, they would curl in a ball and die if I did that. That's fine too. Don't do it then. But be aware of the sort of self-judgment and the self-talk. And you can ask them about it and talk to them about it. And you can share your experiences of what you speak over yourself, shaping how you think. And asking whether or not lying to themselves is useful. And if there was something else that they could say to themselves in those circumstances, what would it be? And maybe problem-solving replacement sentences for them. So just be aware of that shame thing. And if you want to delve more into shame and how to help your kids walk out of shame, there's a podcast section that's on that, and Anna will put a link to it. And the last thing I just want to talk about with teenagers is helping them, equipping them for the next steps. Often our teenagers don't know how to deal with the failure. So they're afraid of failure because they don't know how to climb out of the pit. And they need some equipping on how to get out. What happens when I fail a test? They don't know how to deal with the embarrassment, how to face their teacher, how to face you, how to do that. And so they sort of get paralyzed. And so actually helping them with, hey, you've been studying really hard. What happens if it doesn't? What happens if it doesn't work out the way you want it to? Sometimes, people who are afraid of failing a test, you can actually think about the solutions ahead of time. If it goes great, then great. If it goes terribly, then we'll go out to get cupcakes. I don't know why all my stuff has to do with food rewards. We'll look at that later. But, we'll go for a walk at the, into a beautiful field, and we'll talk about it, and we'll cry, and we'll listen to our favorite music, and we'll figure out a plan of how to try it differently next time. But it's okay. No matter what happens, I'm praying for you, and I'm going to be with you on it, because there's always a next step forward. So whether it's letting them know what it'll be like from you, whether, if they're going to go confront their friend and they don't actually know how to do that, or after they do it, how they walk away from that, do some role play, talk it through, tell stories, equip them for their next steps after the failure. That can often be really, really significant, so that they know what's on the other side of failure. So it's not this big, black, scary thing. It's a totally known quantity, and either side is joy and love. So do you have any, those are my sort of things. Do you have any wisdom, any help, any books, anything that you think is a really significant thing that you've done that is helpful? Or do you have any questions that I can attempt to answer or to point you in a direction? What I'm going to do is I'm going to pray for you, and you can type away, and then we'll come back to it after I'm done praying. And if not, then I will just bless you as you go to sleep. So God, I thank you for our teenagers. I thank you that you have created them to progress and to learn and to continue to grow in who they are. And God, this failure can be so crippling for them. God, I pray that you would fill each of these parents who are listening with wisdom and grace, that they may see their children well, I pray that you would train their eyes to be able to praise that learning and that progress and that effort, that their children may grow in confidence that they are valued above perfection. I pray that you would help them to hear their children well, that they may help shape the language, that they may help shape that self-talk, that they would be able to know what stories to tell about their own lives and what windows to create. That failure and learning and progressing is all part of just normal life. I pray particularly for the relationships between parents and children, that grace and that storytelling and that support may be fruitful in this season. And I pray for these kids as they are walking forward in a very complex teenage life, that you would be with them so tangibly that they would know that you were with them, and that you would help loosen the fear of failure from their hearts. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, I don't see any questions or comments, so I am going to bless you and say I love you, and hopefully we'll see you on a watch party or a podcast, or you can hear me read to you if you want. But either way, we'll then see you next month on the Facebook Live. Many blessings. Take care.